Good afternoon. Welcome to Holy Wednesday here at St Matthew and St Wilfrid, Sunderland. My name is David Tolhurst. I'm the vicar here for those who are tuning in for the first time. This is the third of our reflections for Holy Week. So a big welcome if you're joining us live, a big welcome if you're joining us later on YouTube or Facebook. On Sunday, the start of Holy Week, we saw the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Jesus coming into Jerusalem in a blaze of glory. On Monday, we saw the temple of the cleansing of the temple. This kind of action hero Jesus who kicks over tables and scatters coins and whips made of cords. On Tuesday, Jesus is back in the temple, surrounded by people and controversy, teaching those who would try and trap him. On Wednesday, we have a very different day in this last week. Today, we have a day that doesn't get spent in Jerusalem, but in quietness. I'm going to read to you from Matthew chapter 26, from verse 6 to verse 13. While Jesus was in Bethany, in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price. The money could have been given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for my burial. I tell you the truth, whenever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." In the quietness of Bethany, Jesus is invited for a meal. He's invited for a meal by a man known as Simon the leper. Given that lepers don't tend to invite people round for dinner because they probably wouldn't come, and they were shunned to the outskirts of society, Simon is probably somebody that Jesus has healed. And if we read this account in John's Gospel, we're also told that Lazarus too was at this meal. Jesus is reclining after dinner. And in Matthew's Gospel, an unnamed woman, who in John's Gospel is identified as Mary, the sister of Lazarus, comes and anoints him. Women carried alabaster phials. Within them they had concentrated perfume. It was used one drop at a time. One drop was strong enough to perfume the whole body. One jar could last 40 years. What does she do? Mary, she gives her most precious gift. The devotion of her whole heart. She gives everything to Jesus. This is a moment of incredible beauty, a moment of immense love. Probably one of the most beautiful things to happen to Jesus in his earthly life. And it happens just a few days before his death and resurrection. The disciples, however, aren't so happy or quite so poetic. The disciples are annoyed. You see, what's happened is she's just wasted a year's wages for a normal working man. This is outrageous. If she didn't want it, then surely she could have just sold it and given the disciples the money so that they could have spent it on the poor. Then we get a response from Jesus. Firstly, Jesus says the poor will always be with you. You'll have plenty of opportunity to look after the poor. Secondly, he says what she has done is she has anointed me for my death. It is Wednesday. His death is coming so very close on Friday. And then thirdly, in an incredible statement, Jesus says, I tell you the truth, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. And here we are in 2020, Holy Week, an unusual Holy Week, a COVID-19 Holy Week. But we're telling the story again. Why is it so significant? For me, there are three things. The first is there is an extravagance in love. Love doesn't stop to count the cost. Love doesn't check to make sure it can afford it before it does something. Love pours itself out. Secondly, love seizes the day. This is a day that Mary will never have again. This is the only opportunity she can do this. So as well as not stopping to count the cost and pouring out the whole of the alabaster jar, she seizes the day and a moment with Jesus she will never have again. And then thirdly, love puts a fragrance into the world that time cannot wipe out. In John's Gospel, in this account, we read that the fragrance filled the whole house. If one drop can perfume a whole body, that smell must have been around for days. Where it was actually poured, probably intoxicating for a little while. The beauty of that fragrance stayed. And as Jesus said, what she has done will always be told in memory of her. Love puts a fragrance into the world that time cannot eradicate. And so on this Holy Wednesday, two questions. Two things for us to reflect on. Firstly, if nothing done for Jesus or in his name is forgotten or wasted, what does it mean for us? What do we need to do to take the cap off of our precious alabaster jars and pour out what we have in Jesus' name, particularly in this moment of national and international pandemic and crisis? And my second question. There is an extravagance in love. What are we learning as a church? How can we as a church show in the name of Jesus Christ to our community and our world that extravagance of love? Thank you for joining me, coming together and reflecting and journeying through this Holy Week. I'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Tomorrow is Maundy Thursday, and we will gather together again and reflect on what that day brings to us, what that day says to us, and how that day challenges us. I'll see you then. God bless.